The shocking murder of Reagan Tokes shocked not just the people of Ohio, but the entire nation. A young woman's life, full of potential, was tragically cut short when she became the victim of a brutal crime that nobody could have anticipated. This case raises the haunting question: how could someone who was supposed to be rehabilitated commit such a heinous act? Stay tuned as we uncover the shocking details surrounding the murder of Reagan Tokes, a crime that changed the lives of many forever. Reagan Tokes was a bright, ambitious 21-year-old student at Ohio State University. On the night of February 8, 2017, she was out with friends enjoying what should have been an ordinary evening. Little did anyone know, this would be the last time her family and friends would see her alive. Reagan's tragic end would later uncover a shocking story involving a convicted criminal, a failed justice system, and a horrific act that left the community in disbelief. Her disappearance set off a wave of confusion and panic. It wasn't long before the police started piecing together the unsettling truth behind her fate. What began as a missing persons case soon turned into a murder investigation. The twists and turns of this case would reveal how Reagan Tokes became the victim of a predator who had already been given a second chance at life. But who was responsible for this heart-wrenching tragedy? Reagan Tokes, a life cut short. Reagan Tokes was more than just a college student. She was someone with a bright future. Born on August 15, 1995 in Ohio, Reagan was known for her infectious personality, dedication to her studies, and her love for animals. She was a senior at Ohio State University studying psychology, with plans to continue her education and pursue a career in the field. She had dreams of helping people and making a positive impact in the world. She was also a loving daughter, sister, and friend. Reagan had a close-knit group of friends and family who loved her deeply. Her friends described her as caring and always willing to lend a helping hand. Her parents, especially her mother, were extremely proud of her achievements, and her future seemed filled with promise. She was living life to the fullest, balancing school, a part-time job, and spending time with those she loved. But on that fateful night, everything changed. Reagan, after spending time with her friends at a bar, decided to leave around 10:30 p.m. What was supposed to be a simple trip home turned into a nightmare that no one could have predicted. The night of the murder, Reagan's final hours were spent at a bar near Ohio State University. She had enjoyed a night out, laughing and socializing, completely unaware of the danger that was about to unfold. Around 10:30 p.m., Reagan left the bar and was headed back to her apartment. However, she never made it home. Surveillance footage captured Reagan getting into her car, seemingly heading in the direction of her apartment. But soon after, she vanished. Her family and friends started to grow concerned when she didn't respond to messages or phone calls. By the following morning, her loved ones filed a missing persons report, and a search was immediately launched. What investigators discovered over the next several days was horrifying. Reagan's body was found on February 9, 2017, just hours after she had been reported missing. She had been brutally murdered, and the investigation quickly turned from a missing person case to a homicide investigation. The details surrounding her murder were shocking. Reagan had been taken to a remote area where she was forced into her car and ultimately murdered. The chilling backstory. The key to understanding Reagan's murder was someone who had been out of prison for less than a year at the time of the crime, a man named Brian Goldsby. Goldsby had a criminal history, which included multiple charges of violent offenses. He had been convicted of rape and robbery and was sentenced to a lengthy prison term. However, he was released early on parole, despite concerns over his violent tendencies. His release would later become a key factor in the case. Goldsby had served a significant amount of time for his previous crimes, but he was not rehabilitated. In fact, his release was heavily criticized, with many arguing that he was a danger to society. Goldsby was living in Columbus, Ohio, and it would be revealed that he had been on the prowl for new victims. His criminal history and his presence in the area around the time of Reagan's disappearance raised red flags for investigators. In the aftermath of Reagan's murder, authorities would link Goldsby to the crime through forensic evidence, including DNA found at the crime scene. This chilling discovery would set the stage for the next chapter of the investigation. The investigation begins. Once Reagan's body was discovered, investigators quickly began to connect the dots. Surveillance footage, phone records, and witness statements led them to Goldsby. They were able to trace his whereabouts to the area around the time of Reagan's disappearance. Additionally, DNA evidence found on Reagan's body confirmed that Goldsby had been involved in the crime. As police gathered evidence, they discovered a disturbing pattern in Goldsby's behavior. He had a history of targeting women, and Reagan was not his first victim. Goldsby had been convicted of a similar crime in the past, but he had been granted parole despite his violent history. The investigation revealed a chilling reality. Reagan's murder was not a random act of violence, but part of a much larger pattern of predatory behavior. The arrest of Brian Goldsby. After linking Goldsby to Reagan's murder, authorities moved quickly to arrest him. On February 12, 2017, Brian Goldsby was taken into custody. He was charged with the kidnapping, rape, and murder of Reagan Tokes. The arrest sent shockwaves through the community, as many people had been following the case and were horrified by the brutality of the crime. In the days following Goldsby's arrest, further investigations revealed the extent of his violent behavior. Authorities discovered that Goldsby had a history of targeting women, and his release from prison had been a grave mistake. The fact that he was able to commit such a heinous crime after being released on parole sparked outrage and led to calls for changes in the criminal justice system. The trial of Brian Goldsby. Brian Goldsby's trial began in 2018, and it was a highly emotional and difficult process for Reagan's family. They were forced to relive the trauma of losing their daughter as the details of her murder were revealed in court. Goldsby's defense team tried to argue that he was not responsible for Reagan's death, but the evidence against him was overwhelming. DNA, surveillance footage, and witness statements all pointed to Goldsby as the perpetrator. He was convicted on all charges and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The trial brought some closure to Reagan's family, but the pain of losing their daughter remained. They had hoped for a bright future for Reagan, but her life had been tragically taken by a man who should never have been released from prison in the first place. Aftermath and reflections. Reagan Tokes' murder not only affected her family and friends, but it also sparked conversations about the criminal justice system. The decision to release Brian Goldsby on parole was questioned by many, as his violent past should have disqualified him from early release. The case highlighted the failures in the system and the devastating consequences of letting dangerous criminals back into society. For Reagan's family, the aftermath of her murder was an emotional and heartbreaking journey. They continue to fight for justice and raise awareness about the dangers of parole for violent offenders. Reagan's story has become a symbol of the importance of ensuring that the criminal justice system is held accountable for its decisions. The murder of Reagan Tokes left a lasting impact on everyone who followed her story. A young woman with so much potential, taken from us far too soon. This case serves as a grim reminder that sometimes the justice system fails, and the consequences can be deadly. Reagan's family and friends continue to honor her memory, urging us all to stay vigilant and ensure that those who commit violent acts are held accountable. What do you think could have been done differently to prevent Reagan's tragic death? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this story shocking, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing content.